Holding Chris Sale until an elimination game is the exact way Atlanta should be handling their rotation. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your home for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Christian Rauh. You can follow him on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H. You can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack. And Christian, we got a little bit of clarity yesterday. I got the message from the Braves comms team with the official rotation for this weekend. Not a lot of answers. Max Fried pitches on Friday, TBD. Talking to players, the clubhouse was open. A bunch of players were in to get treatment or to do some hitting, some light workouts, whatever. The way that this is being handled by Atlanta, I think, with Fried going on Friday, TBDs after that, is the right way to handle it because of what you're doing with Chris Sale. The decision on Chris Sale, who was going to start on Wednesday, which would have lined him back up to pitch again in the wild card, is in essence, they are waiting to throw Chris Sale out there until they are facing an elimination game. And I know fans are going to say, every game's an elimination game right now. No, you technically can lose a game and still have a path to the postseason because ahead of you are the Mets and the Diamondbacks, and what they do matters. But there will be a point somewhere, is what Atlanta's assuming, that if you lose that specific game, you are mathematically eliminated. And what the Braves are saying is they are going to wait, and when that game comes, that is when Chris Sale will start.
Yeah, Johnny Nash once said he could see clearly now once the rain's gone, and we're finally starting to get some good ideas here, Lindsay, of what we're seeing from this Braves rotation moving forward. And I think it's a great management decision. I really do. I was questioning, can Sale hold his mental fortitude to be able to go right away and pitch? And I asked you that question offline yesterday, and you said Sale seems to be one of those guys that just will pitch whenever he's ready to go. You call his name, and he'll go out on the mound and throw the ball for you. So that's a good thing, and we're going to need that fortitude moving into these last couple games of the series, last couple games of the regular season, because the Braves got to find a way to get into that wild card race. And they're going to obviously need a little bit of help from the Diamondbacks or the Mets before, if they don't want to play on Monday. But if that's the case, if they have to play on Monday, they're going to have a guy like Chris Sale ready to go. If not, he's ready for the wild card game. So I do think this is a great management decision. And although you do mention that for pretty much almost every game is an elimination game going for the rest of the year, having a guy in the wings like Chris Sale waiting for when it actually matters, 100% on the line, do or die, that is exactly what you need. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. Max Fried going on Friday makes a lot of sense. If Max Fried, he is a very routine-oriented person. He does not like a bunch of extra rest. Most of his starts this year have come on one additional day of rest. He made 15 starts on 5 days. He made 8 starts on 4 days. He made 5 starts on 6 or more days. And it is very clear that he does better if you give him an extra day of rest, which a start on Friday is one additional day of rest. But if you go more than that, he really struggles. His stats on regular rest this year, 8 starts, he's 3-4 with a 3.47 ERA. Struck out 46 and 49 innings. On 5 days of rest, so one additional day, he's 6-4 with a 2.16 ERA. But on 6 or more days of rest, which pushing him off of Friday to Saturday or Sunday would have been more than 5 days of rest. On 6 or more days, he's 1-2 with a 9.30 ERA. Max Fried, just for whatever reason, is better on regular rest or one extra day. Chris Sale, meanwhile, like I said, he does not care. He says you tell him what you want him to do and when you want him to do it, and he will do it. He will take the ball out of the bullpen if you tell him to. He will start whatever day you tell him. He does not shake off his catchers. He throws whatever they tell him to throw. And he doesn't care about the extra rest. He started the last game before the All-Star break, July 14th against San Diego. He then didn't make his next start until July 25th against the Mets. You know what that was? 7 2/3, 2 runs in Citi Field. Chris Sale doesn't care. You could have 5 games in 4 days. If you have to play both games a doubleheader, you might have to throw all 5 starters. Chris Sale is fine just going whenever you need him. If Sunday's an elimination day, he'll go on Sunday. If Monday's an elimination game in game one, he'll go game one. If game two is elimination, he'll go game two. If you don't need him, guess what? Now you got him for Tuesday for game one of the wild card, which if you lose game one, it's not an elimination right there. But teams that lose the first game of the wild card typically go on to lose the wild card rounds. This is the right way to do this. I think what I'm trying to figure out here, Christian, is what is the ideal scenario for pitching this weekend? Is it having Schwellenbach and Sale available for Monday? If game one on Monday is win or go home, you throw Sale out there. And if you don't have to play game two, now you have Schwelly for game one of extra, like on extra rest of a wild card. Is that the best case scenario? And then that means Max Fried can come around and he can pitch a game 2 or 3 if you need it. What's the best case scenario here for Atlanta on pitching in these next 5 games?
First, I can't wait till we actually get to the final segment here when we talk about all the rest of the wild card scenarios what comes with different teams. I'm excited for these because I got some fun ones to throw your way. But when talking about the rotation, I think that that's the best way. What you said at first, holding Schwellenbach until Monday with Sale if you need to go 1-2 punch for the final doubleheader if need be. What that would mean is that Free would go Friday. Best case scenario, you're getting some help from other teams and you can run Charlie Morton out on Saturday, Grant Holmes out on Sunday. I think that would be the best case scenario for the Braves because that means that everything is falling into pieces. You don't need to push a guy like Chris Sale up into the weekend. The Kansas City Royals might be clinching their playoff runs as early as tonight, even without a win. So I think that could be really helpful for the Braves moving forward. But I think the best case scenario, if everything falls into place perfectly, this weekend has Fried, Morton, and Grant Holmes.
Yeah. And then that means, again, like we said, Schollenbach and Sale. And assuming you don't have to play both, we don't have official confirmation from MLB. They have not said, here is exactly what is going to happen on Monday or what we're looking at. But the commissioner has the discretion to bang one or both of these games. And different national writers, guys who were plugged in, I think Ken Rosenthal wrote this up at The Athletic recently, have said that if you have to play one or two of those games to determine who's in the postseason, that's going to happen. But if it's necessary only for seeding, Rob Manfred, supposedly, according to Rosenthal, is open to just canceling that entirely, provided they know it enough time where New York does not need to travel to Atlanta. Again, we haven't gotten confirmation of that. Obviously, no confirmation at all. Nobody else has reported these thoughts. It's only a 2-hour flight from Milwaukee to Atlanta. So if they fly in and then end up leaving there and flying to San Diego or wherever, who cares? It's not a big deal. But I do feel like this rotation, this is the way to do it. Obviously, you can't have a slip up from Morton. You can't have a slip up from Holmes. Ronaldo Lopez is the wild card here. We don't know. Are they comfortable having him start? Do they want him out of the bullpen? What do they do? And if you do get into Monday, even if you don't actually end up playing both games, if this gets to Monday and you do have to play at least one game, we have gotten confirmation you do get an additional man on the roster because a doubleheader is scheduled for that day. So that means you could bring back Ronaldo Lopez without having to get rid of somebody out of your bullpen. You could bring up an Ian Anderson. You could bring up an AJ Smith-Shawver. You could bring someone up to help your pitching depth in that game. You don't have to go into that game and play those 2 games without an extra arm. And it feels even if you only end up playing one game, you're going to want the help from a bullpen perspective or probably more so bullpen than pitching. You're going to want somebody who can give you some bulk innings, provided that you're not having to win or go home simply so that just simply so that you don't exhaust everybody before you head into the wild card. But we did get confirmation you will get an extra person in that game.
Yeah, that's huge. And you mentioned it. It's going to be a guy. I think it should be a guy that, if it's not Lopez, if Lopez hasn't made the roster move, it should be a guy that they're not expecting to put on the postseason roster, so they can just use him innings whenever needed. As soon as one of those games, if they have to play both games, as soon as one of those games gets out of reach in any way, shape, or form, you put in that guy and you use those innings, and he goes as many innings as needed until a situation changes in that game, and you try to have that guy eat as many innings as possible. So yeah, I think that's a huge portion of that is getting an
Mhm.
extra pitcher up. But not having that doubleheader at all, I think, would be even more important because some way, somehow, even with an extra man on the roster, Lindsay, if either of these teams make the postseason, and obviously one of them at the very minimum is going to make it on Tuesday, that bullpen is going to be hurt. One way, shape, or form. It's not going to be a 100% bullpen, and you'd hope that your high leverage guys can be ready for the first game of the wild card, but that's unlikely if you're playing two games on Monday.
Yeah. Playoffstatus.com is a useful website that I've used for a long time that kind of shows probabilities for each playoff spot. And Atlanta has a 33% chance of taking the fifth spot in the wild card, 27% of the sixth spot, 39% chance of not making the postseason. So their their odds are better to be in than to not be in. But at the same time, this is not a guarantee. And one of the issues you have here, and we'll get more into this in the next segment, is a lot of ahead of Atlanta is already decided. And I think that's one of the issues you have going into the weekend. But you can't control that. What you can control is what you do. And if it's a win or go home game, I want Chris Sale pitching. And there's nobody else on the roster I'd rather throw out there than Chris Sale. And so I feel like for as much flack as we've given Atlanta for how they've handled the pitching this year, for how they've not threw away games, but how they used suboptimal starters on spot starts and things like that to give extra rest to everybody. That, like, one, it gave you proof of concept that Chris Sale can go out there whenever you tell him to and give you a quality start. But also, it's made it to the point where, yes, we have the ability to just hold Sale until we need him. Again, there's nobody else in this roster I'd rather have than Chris Sale if I have to win or go home.
No, I completely agree 100%. I cannot wait to get in some of these scenarios because there are questions swirling around my head about
Okay.
what you think that these Braves should do.
Let's go ahead and do that now. All right. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, let's break down what's going on with the Royal Series. Let's break down what Arizona's looking at. We'll do all of that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay, Crosby, Christian, Rauh. Again, you can find all of our written work, bravestoday.com. It's the Braves Today Substack. And all right, so looking at what's going on, I mentioned in the last segment, we had a little bit of questions about what's happening above Atlanta
Yep.
because just about everybody outside of the final, or every spot outside of the final two wildcard spots, are locked in, right? The issue you have here is the Padres cannot improve on the first wildcard spot. They are locked into that. The Brewers cannot improve on the third seed. They are going to be behind the Dodgers, and the Phillies at 94-65 have the two seed as of now. Dodgers at 95-64 have the one seed. Philly faces Washington. Dodgers face Colorado. Whatever they do, they'll do. It doesn't matter. The Padres, however, the Padres are facing the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are still playing for something. And the Brewers are facing the Mets, who are technically not yet confirmed to be in and could still fall out of this. Now, they can't fall out of the postseason until Monday. I think if New York wins one or two more games, they're guaranteed to be in. They'd still have to play because Atlanta's not guaranteed to be in. But that is where you are. And because of that, you can't assume the teams ahead of you are going to lose. And for Arizona, as I understand this, Arizona has to win a combination of four Arizona wins or Braves losses. All right. And as I'm doing math here, if the Diamondbacks sweep the Padres, they're 3 games behind. The Padres have the tiebreaker. If the Diamondbacks sweep the Padres, they are in the postseason. They do not lose, or sorry, they do not get eliminated, meaning Atlanta would have to sweep the Royals and then take the doubleheader from the Mets to get in. So you got to be a Padres fan. That's thing one. The Mets need to, obviously, if the Mets keep winning, that's not good for Atlanta, but the Mets can't lock it up until Monday. So if Atlanta keeps winning, the Mets can't officially knock the Braves out until that Monday matchup. I do think it feels like it's more important what the Diamondbacks do this weekend than what the Mets do this weekend, though, right?
I think it goes either way. If the Mets sweep this weekend and the Diamondbacks just lose one, that means they'll both be at 90 games and the Mets have the tiebreaker. That could push the Diamondbacks out, assuming what the Braves do as well. And that comes to my first scenario. And I want to ask you this one real quick.
Okay.
Let's say that the Diamondbacks, let's say they only win one game this series against the Padres, because the Padres are still fighting for the top spot in the wild card. If the Mets win out, they can still find a way to get up there.
Padres are up by four, but hang on, they're
The
they're
Mets
they're
have
three
five
they're
games
3
left.
games up on the Mets. They're 3 games
Yeah,
up
the
on the
Mets
Mets
have
with 5
so
left.
it's
Okay.
it is
True.
potentially possible for the Mets to
True.
be the number one wild card team.
It
It's
is,
very
yeah.
unlikely, but it's
Yeah.
still there. So let's just say that the Diamondbacks only take one. They finish the season with 89 wins. The Mets already clinched their playoff spot before heading into Monday. The Braves, let's say the Braves need one win on Monday. The doubleheader is still set. The Braves need one win on Monday to clinch their spot over the Diamondbacks. Would it be in the Mets' best interest to I don't know if say the words allow, but maybe not throw out your best guys and let the Braves win that first game so you don't have to play the doubleheader? Think about
I
that for a minute.
I absolutely think it is. I don't think that MLB would allow the Mets to just forfeit it, not even show up in Atlanta,
Sure.
but I
No, yeah.
do think that I mean, they come to Atlanta and I don't know if it's a hangover lineup or if it's just a punt if we win. Because here's where you are. If the Diamondbacks win one game of the weekend,
Yep.
89 wins, Atlanta's at 86 and 71 right now. They have to win 3 games. They have to sweep to be tied with Arizona. They have the tiebreaker on Arizona. So if the Diamondbacks only win one and the Braves sweep, then as long as the Mets are in, both teams are in that scenario.
Yep.
Now, if the Braves lose one of the 3 games to Kansas City, then you're in the scenario of you have to play that doubleheader. But yeah, it feels like it makes sense to me from a purely baseball standpoint to just let for the Mets to in essence just come, make sure that the Braves win. You only have to play one game and you're done, and you can cancel the second game of the doubleheader. But the flip side of that is this isn't going to be solely a baseball decision, right? These are
No.
division rivals. If this wasn't the Mets, if this was the Reds or the Giants, I don't think it would be. I would have zero question that the thought process there would be, hey, we're not going to punt this game, but we're not going to push everything we can to win this game because we want to save stuff for tomorrow's wild card game. But it's a division rival.
Yeah,
It's the
what's
Mets.
more important? You're trying to screw over your division rival or making sure you don't screw over your team for the postseason the next day. So I just
Yeah.
find that a potentially wild scenario that we might run into this Monday. But none of that will even matter if the Padres sweep the Diamondbacks, which is in the cards, and let them sit at 88 wins, and that's the farthest the Diamondbacks go. And all the Braves would have to do is take 2 or 3 from Kansas City, which is likely, which is doable because Kansas City might punch their ticket today and move some of their starting pitchers off this series and throw a hangover lineup out there themselves. So if the Diamondbacks get swept, the Braves win 2 or 3. They have the tiebreaker with 88 wins over the Diamondbacks, and they punch their ticket into the postseason, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Refreshing on the AL wildcard here. Tigers and Royals are tied at 85 and 74. The Twins and Mariners are both 3 games back. Because of tiebreakers, the Mariners are already officially eliminated. The Twins, next time they lose, they go to Baltimore, or they host Baltimore for 3. Next time they lose, they're out. And I think that game starts before the Tigers White Sox game. Either way, Tigers win 1, they're in. Twins lose 1, Royals are in. And so by the 7th inning, I think 7th inning or so of this Braves game on Friday night, assuming that it starts on time, there's been flooding and stuff in Atlanta. By the 7th inning or so, the Royals could clinch a playoff spot. So we'll see what happens here. And the
For your
situation,
for your preseason or your pregame music of choice, everybody, make sure we're listening to Jackson 5 We're listening to Jackson Brown. We're listening to anything with the word Jackson in it because we're big fans of Jackson Merrill today, big fans of Jackson Churio today, big fans of the Padres, big fans of
Jackson
the Brewers.
Holiday for the Orioles. We need the Orioles to beat the Twins.
There we go. That too.
We're
So we need that. ABC 1, 2, 3. We need a little bit of These Days, The Pretender. Okay, we need all that from some music here. So go ahead and make sure that's in your playlist today.
Also helps the Twins with 3-7 in their last 10 and just have not been good recently. But no, this is, as you can tell, like by me getting wrong that the Padres were locked into the 3 seed already. They're virtually locked and they're not completely locked in. This is complicated. This is going to change every day. And the big thing we got from Brian Sidker yesterday is that they are going to be watching this. They are going to be watching what other games do. That's why they have 2 TBDs for Saturday and Sunday, because who they throw out there will depend on what's happening. If, again, Chris Sale is going to be the go-to for an elimination, but you have to assume Charlie Morton, Grant Holmes are in the cards for the next 2 games, assuming that you don't need Sale, but they will make those decisions after each game before the next game. So when the press conference happens after the game, that's when we'll find out who the starter is for the next day. It's going to be touch and go here for a couple days, folks. We're not going to really know what's going on. And again, big wild card here is Ronaldo Lopez. We don't know about Ronaldo Lopez, when he's going to come back, what his role is going to be. He threw a bullpen at 80% intensity. He said he feels ready to go. He doesn't need a rehab outing. Not that you can have one. Obviously, minor league season's over. He could face guys down in Northport or face Braves hitters at Truist Park, but we don't know what his role is going to be or when he's going to come back. I think you mentioned this earlier. I feel like the Monday doubleheader is the best time to bring him back, simply so you don't have to move a bullpen arm out to activate him, because your only option really at this point is you can option down Dylan Lee or Daisabel Hernandez, which both those guys have been guys that they've counted on and used, or you have to DFA somebody. And
If you
so
option Dylan Lee or Hernandez, does the 15-day rule, does that still in effect since the postseason's the next day?
I
Probably
don't
not, right?
believe the 15-day rule would apply. So I
Yeah,
do think if let's say Sunday, or let's say Saturday, let's say you have to throw Dylan Lee like 3 innings on Saturday and he
yeah.
is burned for the rest of the regular season, I believe you can option him down, give Lopez that spot, and then get Dylan Lee back on the wild card roster on Tuesday. I'm not confirmed. If you know otherwise, let us know in the comments down below or tweet at me. I believe that is the rule, though. Now, injured
If
list
that's the
placements,
case if that's the
IL
case, you
placements do
could
carry over, but not options.
okay, good. Okay, good to know. But if that's the case with an option, then if you did have to get in that scenario where you did bring Lopez in, option a guy like Lee that was burnt out,
Or
you would still
Hernandez.
or Hernandez, true. You could still have your extra man. So that could be 2 fresh pitchers on Monday's doubleheader if needed. So that's
Actually,
a good thing to keep in mind. Yeah, potentially.
yeah.
Who would have thought that on September 27th, Lindsay, we would be sitting in a spot like this where we would be talking about just maybe squeaking into the playoffs if we were talking at the beginning of the season? I sure wouldn't have.
Yeah. At the same time, who thought when it came to the trade deadline and all the injuries that you had, who thought you were still going to be in playoff contention at this point? There was a time early in September when I'm like, or I guess maybe it was in August, when I was like, this team's done. Like this they're not going to make the postseason at this point. And that lingered for a little bit. And then, like we talked about yesterday, the offense got hot. The pitching staff continued to be amazing. You've got, even though Austin Riley's not going to come back, right? You still have enough horses, enough pieces here where you can make a postseason run. You just have to get in. And Atlanta's going to do everything they possibly can to make sure that they get in. Before we wrap up, real quick, I do want to say to my sister, Catherine, happy birthday. We are both Braves fans. And like the Atlanta Braves have been one of the things that has been a bonding thing for us. We were on a video chat when the Braves won the 2021 World Series. We cried on the phone together when that happened. We have been, like, the Atlanta Braves have been a big part of our lives and our relationship my entire life. And so happy birthday, Catherine. I hope it's a great one. And I'm excited to hopefully get to take you to a game next year. She moved to Ohio. Her and her husband live in Ohio now, and she did not get to attend a Braves game this year, but hopefully we get to attend a Braves game together next year.
Happy
All right,
birthday.
we'll be back maybe over the weekend. If we get to an elimination game, something happens, we might do an emergency episode, but if not, we'll be back on Monday. In the meantime, if you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell when we drop a new episode. And either way, tell a friend that there's a new Brave show out there that can tells you all you need to know about your Atlanta Braves. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.